Thank you and welcome again to our first Agile People Romania webinar in this new updated form. And we have a wonderful guest here. Let me introduce you to Evan Leybourn. He is the CEO of Business Agility Institute, and he is joining us all the way from Australia, where it's summer and evening right now, as opposed to Romania, where it's not so it's not so warm at this moment. I'm Cristina, Cristina Baghiu. I'm one of the co-founders and community managers of Agile People Romania, and I'm here together with my friend and colleague, Alisa Popa. Hello, Alisa. That will help me to animate this meeting. Evan, once again, welcome. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to be able to talk with you during this 1 hour, and hopefully it's going to be a very friendly meeting and chat. And I'm also inviting the audience, whom I mostly know, and I know they are asking questions usually. So I'm inviting the audience to join in at any moment. How are you, Evan?
I'm very good. I am looking forward to the conversation, and we will keep this informal and as casual as we can. I'm going to try and avoid using slides. Rather, I'm going to use some hand-drawn notes if I need to show just what it means to be an agile organization in this day and age. But like Cristina says, thank you very much. My name is Evan Leybourn. I am the CEO and the co-founder of the Business Agility Institute. I live in Melbourne, Australia, land of fantastic coffee but terrible weather, though the Institute is American, just to make life a little bit more complicated because it's not complicated enough already. As an organization, we are a research organization, a membership organization. We have members in over 80 countries, including Romania. And our mission is to show what it means to advocate for and to research all things related to business agility. Now, I suppose I should start at the beginning.
Yeah,
what
definitely.
is business agility? And we would define business agility as a set of organizational capabilities, behaviors, and ways of working. Now, what's important there is that business agility is not a set of practices. It's not processes or frameworks. Rather, it is how you act, the behavior in which you act as individuals and as organizations. It is those behaviors and ways of working that affords your business the freedom, the flexibility, and the resilience to achieve your purpose. Now, I'm going to say something perhaps a little controversial. You are not in business to make money. You are in business to serve your customer, to achieve a purpose. The better you serve your customer, the better you serve your purpose, the more money you will make. And agile organizations are one where when they need to make a decision between what is good for the customer and what is good for the business, will choose what is good for the customer, knowing that in the long run, that is what is good for the business. And then we get to the final 6 words. Business agility, a set of organizational behaviors, capabilities, and ways of working that affords your business the freedom, the flexibility, and the resilience to achieve your purpose, no matter what the future brings. Now, those 6 words are the magic key, because your customers of today, the people you serve today, are not necessarily the same people you'll be serving tomorrow. Their needs, their expectations will continue to evolve. And we have long since passed the era where you can assume that customers will come to you. The choice available to them, the information available to them surpasses almost any other period in history. There's a concept out of economics called information asymmetry. And for anyone here who has studied economics, I apologize because I'm going to really simplify this. Information asymmetry boils down to the person with the most information controls the price. It's more complicated than that, but as I said, I'm really simplifying it. Now, the key about information asymmetry is that 20 years ago, the firm, the company, had the information. They controlled the price. They knew more information than anyone else did about the inputs, the supply chain, the production process, the impact of what they were creating. And the customers didn't really have a choice. It's you bought that product or you didn't. You might have some competitors, but that was it. But today, your customers have more information, sometimes more information than you do. Your customers know as much about your supply chain as you do. They know as much, if not more, about your competitors and your competitors' products than you do. Today, you don't have the same control over information and price as you used to. So you don't have the luxury of a captive audience, a captive customer, because they will move, they will leave. And so the key to business agility, no matter what the future brings, this means that you have the ability to adapt, to continue to serve a customer whose demands continue to change, new customers, as the world continues to change, no matter what. So that's the key. We're not talking about Agile. We're not talking about Scrum or Kanban. We're not talking about product development. Business agility applies everywhere. Amongst our members, we include financial services organizations. It includes factories. It includes production plants. It includes telecommunications organizations and utilities. These are organizations, some of whom the closest that they get to software development is Excel. Yeah. And so they don't create agility through Agile. They create it in their production processes, but they still need that agility as a business to compete in a modern world. And so that is one of the keys, one of the key important elements to business agility. So I want to shift a little bit and just touch on why this matters. You've got this concept of the change gap. I mentioned before that things are changing. Right? The question is how fast your organization is able to adapt. And that delta really defines your ability or your organization's ability to continue to serve your customers, because your customers keep evolving, they keep changing. And if you can't keep up with them, well, you will be out of business. But I'm not here to scare you or to threaten you, because business agility isn't about survival. Business agility is about thriving. It's about growing. It's about using change to your competitive advantage. It's about being the best possible organization that you can, no matter the organization and no matter what the future brings. There are 4 key principles behind which we talk about when we talk about business agility. The first principle is that business agility is a continuum, not a state. So what does that mean? It means that there is no point where I can say, you are an agile organization, you have agility. Rather, all I can say is, today you have more agility than yesterday. Think of it like a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, right? Pick your poison. There's no magic point where water becomes tea. Rather, it's just the choice. How strong do you want that tea? And that's the same for agility. The choice isn't, do you have it? The choice is, how much do you have, and is it enough?
Can I ask you a question?
Go for
Evan? Okay, so I'm sure that a lot of our attendants know, but we are trying here in Romania to explain what you just did in 12 minutes, to explain it for a lot of time. What is business agility, and what to do with agile out of the IT room and the IT department. And that's why actually we are creating here this Agile People Romania community, who is the community. We hope it should become the community for business agility. And we have here, for example, in our group of attendants, we have people from HR, I know them already. We have people from IT and agile coaching, but not so many, and they are the converted ones that are already working a lot with the business to implement what you have just explained, how to make the business more resilient no matter what, and to change the mindset before introducing the mambo jumbo of frameworks and methodologies. And my question here was, okay, how do you explain to a, let's say, a 10-year-old, not a 5-year-old, how do you explain to a 10-year-old what is business agility? And when I'm thinking about a 10-year-old, actually I'm thinking about 10-year-old experienced entrepreneurs that have done the things their old way for a lot of time, and they don't understand, or they just don't, they are scared to change their mindset and behavior. So as simple as possible, how do you explain business agility to someone who only heard of agile as something that belongs to the IT department?
So I will answer your question in a second, because I want to touch on 3 points as you were talking. So the first is, my daughter is 10. It's a beautiful age. She is currently downstairs making a mess. She is, as are most 10-year-olds, some of the most agile people you will ever meet. I do not need to explain agility to a 10-year-old because they know it. Somewhere we forget. We forget what it takes to just adapt. We forget what it takes to go, oh, that's new. All right, what do I do with it? And so maybe not a 10-year-old, maybe a 25-year-old, but somebody who doesn't get it, right? To answer your question, it boils down to the ability to adapt to change, right? But maybe I would step further and say the ability to embrace change, to use change, because it's not just change happening around you, because you are also the change itself, right? Agility doesn't mean change is happening and you're just trying to move with it. You're leading it.
Yeah.
Right? An agile organization creates change in its wake, and others need to adapt to them.
So embrace and not reject, embrace and not fear. Yeah.
Embrace and not reject, embrace and not fear. Now, the other point which I do want to make, though, is that when we look at agility, as individuals grow, we look for safety, we look for certainty, and somewhere along the line we equate stability, static, unchanging, with stability. But there's a story which goes back thousands of years. It's called, from Aesop's Fables, called The Oak and the Reeds. And I'm just doing this from memory. It goes something like, a mighty wind blew down a tall oak, and it fell amongst some reeds, to which that it addressed, "How is it that you, who are so frail and weak, survive these strong winds? Whereas I, the oak, who am tall and strong, am destroyed." The reeds replied, "You fight against the wind, and thus you are destroyed. Whereas we bend beneath the least breath of air and remain unharmed." And so somewhere in our teens and 20s, we make this mistake that to be static and strong and rigid is strength and stability. But the truth is the exact opposite. And we know, we knew this thousands of years ago. Strength and stability comes from movement. And we need to remember that. And that's why the word is agile. It reminds us of dancers and gymnasts, people who are lithe and can move, because that is strength. That is stability.
Not being rock solid.
Rocks.
Yeah.
So that's the difference.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, definitely. Coming back to what you were just saying about business agility being a continuum, a process, not let's say a destination. My other question is, how do we know that or how to put it, how do we know how agile we are? So at what step of the process are we already? Do we know that we are making progresses or not? Or we just go with the flow and measure other metrics that relate to business? So how do we know that we changed the mindset or whatever you were saying about business agility?
Let me actually, so I said there were 4 principles, and the principles actually answer your question. So the first is it's a continuum, not a state. The second is that there is a range of agility simultaneously in an organization.
Okay.
You've got high and low agility at the same time, and that's normal. The third point is that there are thousands of ways of achieving agility. There's no one practice, there's not one process that you can use to create agility. Honestly, it doesn't matter because of the last point, cultural behavioral change. The only way to create agility is to act with agility, to behave with agility. So we're a research organization, which means we need to be able to measure agility. Now, we can't say you're agile, you're not, because it's a spectrum. We can't even say this organization is here because it's a range. And we can't look for practices. We can't say you're doing a retrospective. Great, you have agility. Rather, because you could be doing quality circles or retrospectives or any other form of continuous improvement, and we're good. All we're looking for, and so we do measure organizations, we run profiles. We measure them through observable behaviors, and that's the key. Mihai, you have a question?
Yeah, it's not really a question. It might just sound like I'm trying to look smart. I was thinking that about Christina's questions earlier. I'm working as a consultant with organizational culture transformation, and I've used some instruments from agility and design thinking and lean startup and so on. And the answer to why does not companies in Romania or people in Romania, entrepreneurs, understand the business agility is because of culture. Because we don't have the culture to do things this way. the way of working that we are used to is we do stuff like this and we get results and we repeat it, and that becomes a behavior. So the question from my side, the organizational culture transformation, how to help implement new ways of working, because with my colleagues in consultancy companies, they implement new ways of working. I make sure the culture is supporting that change. What trick do you have to maybe make people understand that they need to change their culture before they change new ways of working? Because this is my struggle. I have some successes, but I have more failure than successes. Because when we go to transforming culture, and this is also for Cristina, and this is my experience, I start with the diagnosis. And when you do that, you make them see a picture they don't always like, because their patterns, the way they are doing things until now, some of them are toxic. Some of them are making people feel not that good. Some of them are making them lose money, and so on. And the Romanian entrepreneurs that I work with, most of them took it personally. And they said, if this is the image of my company, then I did something wrong. And I cannot accept this. So Mihai, you're the one that did something wrong. Go away. And you don't even reach the implementation of new ways of working or agility, because when you design this initial picture, they don't like it and they say stop. So do you have any tricks to make them swallow the pill easier?
Yep. So these are very good questions and very common challenges. So I've just been taking a few notes as you've been talking. So I've got a few answers to that. So the first is, you are absolutely right. And I'm going to talk about the problem, and then I'll talk about some of the ways that I have addressed that problem. So the first thing is understanding human nature. I remember when I was younger, very, very foolishly, very naive, I would say things like, I don't want to work there. It's full of politics. Right? It's full of that sort of like people playing games with each other. And I would think that if only people would use some common sense, if only they would stop and just consider for a second, things would be so much better. But I'm not quite so naive anymore. And I've realized that politics is how work gets done in organizations. You have to play the game if you're going to win. And if you try and be the outsider, then it will all, it won't work. And I'll give a real example. This is an Agile People group, and some of you are coming in from HR teams. Do you call it people operations or people and culture, or do you call it HR? Who wants to, someone tell me how they call it in their organization? Mihai, how do you call it in your organization?
I work as a freelancer, so I don't have an organization, but the trend in Romania is they started to call it people and culture more and more.
More and more, but still HR, in many other organizations. So it's just a matter of choice, and
it's a new trend to call it people.
It's a trend, right? Yeah. And that's okay. But here's the thing: this trend comes from a very negative movement. Humans are not resources. People are not resources. That's a valid sentiment. It's absolutely correct. People are not resources. People are people. And so calling it human resources to some people is offensive. But here's the thing. If you go into an organization and say, you're wrong, right? You shouldn't call it human resources. People aren't resources. It should be people and culture or people operations. You're alienating the entire audience, because it's like, well, we called it HR for 50 years. It's been fine for that long. You make the change not by showing them their mistakes. You don't say, you've been doing it wrong for 50 years, now it's time to do something different. You let them, you need to meet them where they are, and then you can bring them on the journey. It's why in our library, we have a lot of material relating to people, but we still call it HR in our library, because that's what 70 to 80% of the organizations that we're engaging with still call it. And we want to engage them where they are so they will come on the journey. Even though I truly believe that humans aren't resources, I don't think it's the appropriate phrase. Now, another point, just in terms of how this change occurs. What we recommend when organizations begin down a path towards business agility is to look what we call the levers of change, those little things that influence the organization. For example, your organizational performance metrics, your scorecards or your KPIs or OKRs, whatever you want to call it. And there's an old saying, you get the behavior that you measure. And I'll use a HR, a people example. We expect a behavior of collaboration, right? Of teams coming together. We form squads and tribes, cross-functional, multidisciplinary teams. And we try and we spend months coaching these teams to be collaborative. And then October and November, it's the performance management time. And everyone gets called into meetings with their boss, and their boss says, all right, I've got 3 3s and 4 2s. Cristina, I'm giving you a 3. Mihai, I'm giving you a 2. Because
my favorite example.
Our incentive system, our reward system is highly individualistic. It is geared towards optimizing for individual performance, not team-based performance. And so all of those behaviors around collaborate, we've worked as a team for a year, and Cristina gets a bigger bonus than I do. We did the same work, but as your manager, I don't have enough 3s to give around. That's just how the business has been structured. At the same time, this then starts to unravel, like destroy those behaviors that we've spent all that time creating, because the systems of the organization break the behaviors that we're trying to build. And so look at those KPIs, look at those measures. If you design measures and governance systems that support the behaviors you're trying to change in small ways, you don't have to transform the organization, but just find those constraints, find those little systems, those little levers that you can pull that will have a cascade effect across the organization. That is how you change everything. That is how you change an organization.
Yeah, and I have success stories that double down on what you said. We use those threads. The problem still remains, because I don't have a problem after we start in how to implement those small changes, increments, and all the threads. I have a problem, as Cristina also said this, when you start explaining to people, this is what's going to happen. We're going to take a look at what you have now, recalibrate your vision, and then implement business agility to reach that vision. And the people get stuck on the initial diagnosis, on the status quo, because they don't like what they did until now.
But that's what you can't do. You can't go into them and say that's that politics. All right.
But I'm not telling them anything.
They've been wrong for 20 years.
I'm not telling them anything. I'm just asking questions. How do you do this? And they say, we do it like this, and someone else says, that's not good. It's a fight amongst themselves. I'm just a coach, referee.
And so here, and here what you're seeing, and so what's happening in those kind of contexts is where there is a toxic or the organization itself has some existing dysfunctions, right? And
Yeah.
You're going to have to try and resolve that. And one of the key capabilities that we talk about in business agility, and there are 18 capabilities that we try and encourage organizations to develop. One of them is what we call the ability to act as one. And it sounds like before you even start on funding models or HR practices, maybe you just need to start on that, building the ability for that organization, for that leadership team to act as one. And there's a whole series of behaviors underneath act as one that will help develop that. So part of the key here is finding which capabilities are constraining the organization and starting there. Now, I want to just also recognize that Dragos has had his hand up for a while. So maybe if we go to him and let him ask his question.
Thank you very much. I may add or complete something you were talking about. So how I may share how it was successful in my organization. So you need to change. So it's very important leadership. Leadership drives that at top from my point of view. So 2 actions from leadership: eliminate the silos to have everyone act as one, as you said. That's a natural leadership move, which will not happen naturally from bottom up. And second, if you want to change and to close that gap we showed previously, you need to, open-minded people in terms of leapfrogs. You can achieve this incrementally, or you can think in terms of leapfrog. And leapfrog comes to innovation. Innovation, I'm not talking IT here. Innovation, it gives you a competitive edge, it gives you advantages. And for that, I think one of the most important things, which is not processes, is what you said, behavior. Because what I saw or noticed with business is, yes, customer focus, they are okay with it. They used to have it from marketing, from other places. Then collaboration, a little bit tricky, but you can do that. What they are missing completely is this continuous process. It's the once you want to change, you do it permanently. And continuously, what I also found very challenging is continuous learning. It's not only continuous doing that, but also learning, improve yourself, develop new skills, and so on and so forth. And the last one, and the most important one, is the ownership. I'm not talking leadership now. So when you drive these processes, you need to put this culture of ownership. And I would split into accountable and responsible. Coming to Mihai's comment in culture, I think it's not only Romanian. Many people feel accountable because they have assigned a task. But if you are responsible, you act even if a task is not with you, if you see that task is not going in the right direction, or the accountable person is not really driving that stuff. And you need to be flexible, you need to be prepared. And to complete your oak metaphor, I also put my audience in the position of sharing an experience, and I will close with that. I had from Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee, the martial arts expert, if you remember, from a long time ago, had an interview once upon a time being asked about his new karate style. And he said, and he put a cup of tea on a table. I don't know if you know the nice story. And he poured some water in the cup. And he said, look what the water did. The water took the shape of the cup. If you cannot change the cup, you need to take the shape of the cup. So I think it's a good philosophy. It helped me a lot. If an organization or someone is not changing, you may probably look on you and try to change yourself to adapt in such a way to be able to drive this change further. Thanks.
So let me comment. So I like what you're describing there. And there's, I agree with almost everything that you said, but I am going to challenge one thing. But before that, just to amplify a little bit, it does start with leadership. And when we, in our research, we've identified, or we've built a behavioral model of business agility, and there are 84 behaviors that we've identified. And I know that's a lot, but we're talking about a complex adaptive system. There's a lot to be done. Now, of those 84 behaviors, I think it's 56 of them are specifically related to leaders. And these behaviors are exactly what's necessary to achieve or to help an organization enable business agility. Now, you did say one thing at the beginning where it's like one of the first things you need to do is break down the silos. And you are right, but I also disagree quite fundamentally with one aspect of that. And that is you actually can't break down silos. Human nature is such that we will always form silos. We will always form tribes. And whether it's Dunbar's number of like 150 people, there is this natural us versus them that always occur. Just look at politics, look at sports teams, look at families. It's that tribalism, that siloed mentality is a fundamental human state. Now, where Dragos, you're entirely correct, is many organizations have dysfunctional silos where the flow of value between idea and customer intersects multiple silos. And because of that human nature, that introduces major bottlenecks, major barriers to the flow of value to the customer. That's bad. You need to break down those silos, but silos are always going to form. So my recommendation is that you need to design the silos. If you break them down, they're going to form without your input. They're just going to form, and they'll form in ways you don't expect, and probably in bad ways. If you design the silos, design where that tribal boundaries are going to form as best you can, and obviously human nature is not always predictable, in such a way that the flow of value is contained within a silo rather than crossing the boundaries, then your customers get positive outcomes. You can get some creative tension, but you're not going to get active hostility. So be deliberate about the silos and about those barriers that form in your organization.
Yeah, I didn't meant completely destruction. So what I meant, actually, we have seeds and CP, crop protection, in my company. And of course, as you said, tribes belongs to both of these. But we establish, constant communication. We share our achievements. We try to have the same platform below to build on, of course, with different scope and different things. We try to find synergies in between. They will always remain separate from an affiliation point of view, but from a business purpose, it should be consolidated, and the communication between them should be, as you said, designed in such a way to remove frictions and try to harmonize the efforts. Absolutely agree. Thanks.
No, agreed. So I want to touch on a couple of other key points. And while we're staying on the topic of leadership, because Dragos, you're absolutely right about the role of leaders in organizations. I want to share one thing, and this isn't a business agility thing. This is just really about developing good leaders in your organization. And given that a lot of you are coming out of a people and a HR background, this is going to be a key element. One of the things in my career, I've been an executive. I first became an executive in 2008. I became a director in the Australian Public Service. I don't know if any of you who have worked in government or are currently working in government, but it's bureaucratic. But they also have very poor people development, at least the Australian government did at the time. The big challenge is that I had this arrogant assumption that because I was good at my job, I must theoretically also be good at being an executive responsible for that as well. And what nobody taught me was that that was a fundamentally different skill set. And this isn't just my fault. This is the fault of the system, the organization. I never received any training when I became an executive. The people who interviewed me also assumed that because I was good at X, I must be good at leading X. And there was just this it was a large misunderstanding between what was necessary to be a good leader in an organization. There was a study a couple of years ago by Career Builder. I mean, like 56% of new leaders receive no training when they become a leader. And so what we have, and actually, you know what, I'm not going to use the word leader, I'm going to use the word manager, right? Because managers should all be leaders. But management skill is something that is undervalued and undertaught in organizations today. And yet the impact is profound. We know that people don't leave companies, they leave bad managers. Right? We know this. This has been known for decades. And yet we still aren't developing good people managers. We don't have that ability. And we're not even recruiting good people managers either. And so we have real challenges inside those systems. So one of the things, and one of the, when we build profiles of organizations, because we do these statistical profiles of organizations, we're a research organization. One of the things that we're actually looking for is those organizations' ability or investment in management skill and developing management skill, because it's something that is lacking in so many organizations. For me personally, there was this aha moment when my boss at the time pulled me into a room. I'd been there for 2 or 3 months and said, Evan, if you want to keep this job, you have to stop being so arrogant. And this was confronting for me because I don't see myself as arrogant. That's not part of my mental model of who I am. And at the time, I drew this up, right? Competence, confidence, and empathy, which for me, it was like competence and confidence without empathy is arrogance. Confidence and empathy without competence is a fraud. Right? And empathy and competence or skill without confidence is untrustworthy. Right? We trust people who act confident in their own skills. And I realized that because of my insecurities, because of the lack of skill, I was compensating. And so I was coming across as arrogant. And one of the things that's become incredibly important to me is almost like reclaiming management, because we talk as a community about leadership all the time. And it's good. We need to talk about leadership. But somewhere in that conversation, we've forgotten to talk about management and management skill. And if you look at popular culture, right, managers are incompetent at best and evil at worst. You've got the pointy head boss from Dilbert. You've got the managers from the office or office space. These are incompetent and evil people. Popular culture is not kind to managers. And we don't do that any service because we don't train them. We don't give those managers the skills to be good managers. And yet when we look at good agile organizations, those that create effective working environments full of empowered and engaged staff that are customer-centric, one of the key commonalities across all of them is an investment in management skill. Even self-managed organizations with a flat hierarchy, these aren't organizations with no managers. These are organizations where everyone is a manager. It's self-management. And so those management skills are taught to everybody, not just to the select few. So those management skills are incredibly important in agile organizations, and are, to Dragos's point, and I'll plus 100 to what he said. It has to, that investment in leadership and management skill has to be a major part of any kind of business agility or agile people transformation. So I'm slightly off topic there, but I hope that made sense.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you so much. You were saying that you measure like tens of behaviors of business agility. Are some more important than others, or if one is missing, you can compensate? Or what's the point of having a such a broad spectrum of behaviors. Can you behave agile on what, or on all levels at all times? Yeah.
No, not all levels at all times. It's always a continuum. It's a spectrum. And organizations and the agility that organizations express are, it's in flux. It's constantly in movement. Now, we don't recommend organizations change individual behaviors because they're intertwined as well. You start improving one thing, you're going to have a cascading effect. But I talk a lot about the theory of constraints. Yeah. So for those of you who aren't familiar with it, this comes out of a book called The Goal by Eli Goldratt. And it basically says that in a process, there's a constraining factor. So let's say that you're building a car, and my daughter made this car for me a while ago. Let's say it takes 5 minutes to install the engine and 4 minutes to install the wheels. No amount of transformation of the wheel team is going to speed up the production of those cars. They're going to roll off every 5 minutes because the constraint is how long it takes to install the engine. Now, the corollary to theory of constraints is that there's always a constraint. So let's say we optimize the engine team. And so now it takes 3 minutes to install the engine. Now, cars don't roll off the production line every 3 minutes, but every 4 minutes because the constraint has now moved to the wheel team. Now, with apologies to Eli Goldratt, Evan's theory of agile constraints, an organization is only as agile as its least agile function, and that's not IT anymore. So wherever the constraint to agility is, that's where you should be focusing. Those behaviors are the ones that you need to focus on. And let's just take technology, for example. You're doing Scrum, you're doing DevOps. You can create a potentially shippable product increment in 2 weeks. You can deploy in 11 seconds. That's fantastic. But if it takes you 8 weeks to hire somebody, if it takes you 9 months to get a budget change approved, if it takes you 2 months to get approval from the project control board, your constraint to agility is in the broader business systems. It's not in those agile technology space. And this is one of the reasons where when we talk about business agility, we're not just talking about agile outside IT, because that's not enough. We are talking about agility in the systems of the organization itself. I don't need HR to use Scrum, but I do need to be able to recruit someone and get approval to recruit for a mission critical project in a timely manner such that we are not constrained by that process. I don't necessarily need agile finance, but I need our funding models adaptive and flexible, that if what we're doing is we discover there's a better opportunity, we can redeploy funds in the middle of the year or in the middle of the week. I shouldn't have to wait until next financial year for the next budget cycle before I can start on something that our customers need today, because your competitors aren't waiting. They are able to move their funds much more rapidly than you perhaps can. And that's where the constraint in the system comes into play. You don't need to change every behavior. You just need to know which behaviors are constraining your agility, and that's where you need to focus your transformational investment. And this is the big problem with many organizations right now, because they've invested millions of dollars in these agile and business agility transformations, all of these wonderful agile coaches with amazing skills, right? To Mahay's point, bringing in and helping to transform organizations. But after a little while, and sometimes a very little while, the constraint moves from the team that is funded to transform to elsewhere in the business. And because the way the businesses are set up, I can't transform that other team. They're the constraint. And so we reach this point of diminishing returns. And so the organization's been promised all of these amazing benefits from agility, But because the transformation is constrained within one space, which is not the constraint to agility, that is not where they should be, and they are unable to be redeployed, there is a huge amount of waste, a huge amount of spend in a transformation that does not achieve anything because it's in the wrong place of the organization. And we see this with organizations all around the world. It's a real challenge.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Transform the constraint.
Yeah.
Sorry, Cristina.
Yeah, actually, I knew about Evan's theory of constraints before knowing about Evan Leybourn. So this was this was something very, very funny and unusual for me. We are coming to the end of our meeting, and I was just wanting to make some points. Business Agility Institute is, for me personally, a very broad and source and of information around everything related to personal development and organizational development. I'm not going to use the agility term again. So I'm really recommending everybody to look into the Business Agility Institute, to work, research, white papers. Actually, in my programs, there is almost one article from Business Agility Institute as a reading recommendation per week. And what I also like to showcase is your research work, as you are running a lot of surveys at global level, and we tried to make the surveys known also in Romania for you to have the Romanian perspective of organizational culture, and hopefully we did appear somewhere on your map there, Evan.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So my recommendation is to follow and register on the Business Agility Institute, just for your own learning and mind broadening activities. You have also the website in the chat. I would also like to let you know that we are working, and hopefully we will have this profile translated in Romanian. So one of the cultural, let's say, challenges that I was facing for a long time already is the language barrier, not in the fact that people don't know other languages, but in the fact that you feel much more comfortable to answer very sensitive and important questions in your own language. So we are working, and hopefully by the end of the year or the beginning of next year, this business agility profile will be also available in Romanian. That will help everybody understand what are our constraints. I think this is the right word. What are our constraints towards business agility in a very complex system?
And I'll add to that. We are a research organization. We do we do a number of different research, not just surveys as well. The profile is an interesting study, an interesting piece of research that we do that goes deep into individual organizations. One of the things that we have discovered is that there are certain, let's call it national culture patterns that emerge. I'll use Turkey as an example. We have done a lot of profiles in Turkish for Turkish organizations, and there, as a society, there's obviously the Turkish lira goes up and down all the time. These are people who are used to uncertainty and ambiguity. So there are certain elements that definitely emerge culturally in terms of a predisposition for agility. And whilst we've not done any profiles of Romanian organizations, it would be very interesting to see any national culture that emerge through your business cultures. We see this in America, we see this in the UK, in Turkey, in Singapore, for example. And yeah, it's fascinating to see just what different organizations find important and the challenges that they face.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you very much, Evan. I will just take 1 minute, just 1 minute to present our community, the Agile People Romania community, which is a community of practice and collaboration for the people who want to understand and experiment and eventually implement business agility. So we only want to make a call to action to everybody who wants to be involved, either as a contributor, maybe supporting us in co-organizing events like this one, or maybe joining us as a guest speaker if you have an experiment to share or a learned lesson from your implementations of cultural change, organizational transformation, and so on, or just be with us as enthusiastic as possible, like you are now, and join us in learning and co-creating business agile mentality in Romania. So we are going to prepare a lot of more events like this one, but not only. So if anybody has an idea or a subject, a topic that they want to touch, please let us know. And this is our website, www.agilepeople.ro, and email. And of course, you know me, Cristina, Baghiu, from a lot of other instances and events and workshops, and my colleague Alisa, who is here with me and supporting all this crazy and crazy endeavor to change mindsets in Romania. Thank you. Okay. So we are right on time. Punctuality. Thank you. Thank you again, Evan. How was it for you? Just one word.
Lovely.
Okay.
I enjoyed the questions, and there were some challenging questions, and you have a very vibrant community here, and that is, I think, to be commended. Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. Thank you, everyone, for participating and joining.
Thank you too.
Thank you. Thank you. It was great having you. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Take care. Good evening, Evan, and have a nice day, friends.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye. Bye-bye.